France. Well, to discuss this a little further, I'm now joined on the line by Michael Bociurkiw. Michael is currently Senior Research Fellow and Head of International at the Atlantic Council's new Eurasian Strategies Centre. He is speaking to us now from Odessa in the Ukraine. First of all, thank you so much, Mr. Bociurkiw, for joining us here on France 24. Perhaps we could begin with today's meeting then. Catherine telling us that, of course, all of this depends on an eventual ceasefire, and before that, talks between Zelensky and Putin. But today's meeting does seem really to have been about locking down some sort of concrete contributions from various countries so that they can then say to Trump, you know, if a ceasefire is agreed, this is what we'll do. Will you provide some kind of backstop if we need it? So, you know, what might the coalition realistically provide, do you think?
Yeah, just to clarify, if I may, so now let's get into trouble. I'm Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council Eurasia Center. I think your correspondent hit it on the head, is that if a ceasefire should take place, that's the key line here. The feeling here in Ukraine is that what is needed is here and now. Odessa was attacked once again overnight, World Port Odessa, the port that feeds the world. And as you know, Kiev many, many times. So that's what Ukrainians want right now, is more muscle to be able to down those destructive Russian missiles and drones that come pretty much on a nightly basis. And of course, also to push back Mr. Putin from grabbing more territory in eastern Ukraine. Look, the feeling here right now is Europe looks very impotent at the moment. One of the things I heard the other day from someone around here is that if Europe can't or won't stop a man-made famine happening on its doorstep in Gaza, how can it be possibly expected to help defend Ukraine? Another quick question, if I may, coming from Ukrainians is, what about the 200 billion euros sitting in European banks, frozen Russian assets? When will those be released to help Ukraine fight this war?
Yeah, that is something that I was going to ask you about. Do you think we will see any movement on that? Emmanuel Macron has been among those who are reluctant to see those frozen Russian assets spent. The interest is being spent or can be spent, but he's really worried about the effect that might have on markets. Do you think that Zelensky might push him on that, and that there might be a change of mind from Macron on that? He's one of the key.
Yeah, definitely they're going to push. They've been pushing for a long time. And I think Christine Lagarde of the European Central Bank is also worried about the integrity of the euro. Well, I have a message for them. You know, they can worry all they want about the integrity of the euro, about the integrity of Euroclear in Brussels, but it's going to be a lot costlier for them to defend Europe, to defend the euro, if President Putin and his generals are allowed to go further into Ukraine, possibly into Moldova, next door to me, where there are parliamentary elections coming up. So, you know, the thinking here is that we need to deploy as much as we can right now to help Ukraine, either that 200 billion, not only the interest, but the principal for defense of Ukraine, but also for reconstruction efforts as well. There's one more thing that came up in the past 24 hours, you may have seen, is the head of the Russian military armed forces displayed a very worrisome map that showed Mykolaiv and Odessa as part of Russia. I don't know if that's part of the Russian war planning. We know it's a dream of Vladimir Putin, but it goes to show how far the Russians are willing to go, at least in their minds, to make further advances in Ukraine.
You seem to be suggesting that this meeting today was not worth holding, that it was rather pointless, that Putin will do what he has to do, that Donald Trump will not stop him, and that we are a long way from talking about what might happen after any eventual ceasefire.
Yeah, I don't mean to come across as the main cynic in all of this, but what came out of that circus in the White House and also in Alaska, but especially in the White House when the European leaders gathered with Mr. Trump, it looked to many of us like a cheerleading squad meeting with the head coach and praising him to no end. Look, the problem right now, we can't put the blame, solely on the shoulders of Europeans, but, with Mr. Trump as supposed leader of the free world, he's the contortionist in chief. He changes his mind, he loses interest. You can't take him at his word. He is into self-enrichment. So it's very, very difficult for European leaders, policy planners, for Mr. Zelensky to know what to expect from Mr. Trump. He may promise something within the next few minutes when he holds the phone call with the leaders, but whether he can actually deliver, especially because none of this really pleases his base, is another matter.
All of that is certainly true, and I think a lot of people would worry that even if Trump were to sign up to some of this, if Russia then violated any eventual ceasefire, would he really order US jets to down, Russian missiles? What would it be worth, as you say? Now, everybody in Europe, the European leaders are fully aware of all that. Nevertheless, they have committed themselves to try and help Ukraine, not least for the threat it poses within Europe. What should they do? Can they manage without any backing from Trump?
Sure, good question. Well, they're doing a lot that is very praiseworthy. And among that is, kind of in the behind the doors, assisting Ukraine, especially building up its capabilities here, drone production, that sort of thing. This has become a very much high-tech war. And, 4 years ago, before this war started, Ukraine absolutely did need a lot of training. Now it's such a tested war machine that it could probably even train some modern European or other armies. So, but what's needed right now is protection. These domes for strategic centers in Ukraine, Kiev, but again, World Port Odessa, this port that feeds the world. And I think it saddened a lot of Ukrainians when the German chancellor pedaled back commitments to provide the Taurus missiles, those high-powered, long-range, very, very smart missiles that can strike targets within Russia. That's another thing that Ukraine needs right now. It has the legitimate right to defend itself by striking legitimate targets inside Russia. It's done a lot on its own with those drones, but it needs those high-powered missiles, for example, to take out the Kerch Strait Bridge, a pet project of Mr. Putin, and also a very, very vital military supply line for Russia.
So do you think we're likely to see, if there is a ceasefire again, ever these coalition troops on the ground in Eastern Europe monitoring this ceasefire? Britain has said it would pledge 10,000 troops. It seems that 30,000 is the number that's needed because of rotation and rest, so that 10,000 would be in use all of the time. France, Emmanuel Macron has said he is willing to send troops. A number of European countries have absolutely ruled it out, Poland, Italy. Do you think that will happen, given that you seem to be suggesting Donald Trump is so untrustworthy they would just be putting themselves into harm's way?
Well, I remember when I was part of the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine in 2014, 2015. Back there, the situation was different. It did take a long time to get up to full scale so that we could monitor the situation on the ground along the entire front line. But let's remember, everyone, what happened then is the Russians did everything to stymie our efforts. They even used electronic jamming to bring down our very, very expensive monitoring drones, observation drones. We had a small mission, not many people know this, on the Russian side of the border. The Russians did everything possible there to block their view, to block their monitoring. So I don't expect their behavior to change any differently now. It is a big difference, of course, to have uniformed NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine. That's something where Mr. Putin has drawn a red line, but who's he to draw red lines? So I think Europe has to show its commitment, its strength, its real resolve to do this and not be frightened by Mr. Putin and his rhetoric, because I think I have the suspicion that they still are frightened by his possession of tactical nuclear weapons, that sort of thing. But they have to get over it, because once again, if they don't, you could have Russia. There's a very big likelihood of Russia coming further into Europe, and imagine the cost there. And if they don't come into Europe, they will push more Ukrainians outside of Ukraine into European states, increasing the burden and the political complexities, domestic complexities there too.
Quite a scenario. Just before we go, I did want to ask you one quick question going back to a non-military means of pressuring Russia. Donald Trump got quite irate a couple of days ago when in the Oval Office somebody said, why don't you toughen up oil sanctions on Russia? And he said, look what I did on India. I imposed 50% tariffs because they are buying Russian oil. What did you make of all that? That seemed a very roundabout way of punishing Russia. He doesn't care so much to punish Russia most of the time, and it has really had repercussions in the relationship with India. What was all that about?
Yeah, well, your question is very timely because only 2 days ago I was on India Today on a panel, and there it was made very, very clear to me by the Indian side is that, hey, just a minute, everybody, we started buying Russian oil at the behest of the United States because a lot of what we buy is refined in India and then resold to Europe to lessen their dependency on things. And of course, Mr. Trump is swinging his tariff club and hitting India very hard. But they argue very, very strongly is that they were put into this situation. Look, the other thing I'm going to say, because there is a bit of hypocrisy here, and once again, I don't mean to come across as the biggest cynic on earth, but according to Ukrainian investigative television programs, there are still Russian-owned steel factories operating within a short drive of NATO and EU headquarters in Brussels. Now, what kind of scenario does that create in the minds of Ukrainians when they see that sort of thing happening? So it takes a long, long time to redraw energy flows. You can't do it at a flip of a switch. But Mr. Trump likes to, yes, not punish the Russians, but punish others. And if only he would go after Mr. Putin, as he promised, we would be in a different scenario where we are today.
Well, you've certainly given us lots to think about there. Thank you so much. We're going to have to leave it there. Michael Bociurkiw, thank you so much for your analysis on this.